see if I can start this up. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our discussion today. We just opened up the doors, so it'll take a few minutes for folks to get settled. I hope wherever you are, you're having a nice day. We have a nice panel for you today on the topic of knocking down the silos in higher ed. Real tools for building intentional relationships across campus. This is, oh gosh, I don't know, is it number 12 or so in our series with Adam Smith that we've been doing all year? And before we hand this off to Adam and get started, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping for you. First of all, everyone here is going to receive a follow-up email from us that's going to include a recording of this demonstration. If you find it valuable and you want to share it with colleagues, please do. You can become part of the conversation. You can give, kudos or make suggestions or ask questions of our panel by looking in the GoToWebinar control panel and clicking on where it says questions. It might also just be a question mark. Go ahead and click that. And if you could, just to prove to me that you know what I'm talking about, if you can just type in where you're calling from today, the name of your city, the name of your school, the name of your state, it doesn't matter, just anything to let myself know, let Adam know where the questions are coming from, and of course, so that you guys can know how to communicate with us. We have a chat box that will allow us to communicate with you, but the questions box is the way you'll be communicating with us. So just go ahead and click that question mark and type in the name of your wherever. I myself, sitting just north of Boston, on a beautiful 75-degree day. Couldn't ask for a nicer day. Looks like we've got Laredo College calling in, Detroit, Illinois, Alabama, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Laredo College, Bryn Mawr, California, New York, Moore, Dallas, Miami University, Ivy Tech, Maine, fantastic. I was just in Maine this weekend. What a great state. I'm not going to read everyone. You're all chiming away. Thank you so much for telling us where you're calling from. And that, again, is the area that you will ask questions or give your feedback or thoughts or whatever you want to do to communicate with the panel. That's the way to do it. So jumping right in here, I just want to say that this is sponsored by Infobase, sponsored by Vault Firsthand. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Vault Firsthand, it's our career intelligence platform, the career building platform that engages job seekers, students, and professionals to find the right career path using the power of firsthand experiences. Without further ado, I'm going to disappear from view and hand it off to Adam Smith. Take it away, Adam.
Thanks, Lisa. Lisa, don't go. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much to Infobase. Infobase has just been an amazing partner. It's pretty rare that you find a corporate partner that says, you know what, come in and just do your thing. Bring in voices, thought leaders to having very different, interesting, basically red table conversations about issues that are really present and poignant in people's lives, whether it's higher ed, K-12, corporate, libraries, all over the place. So Infobase has just been an amazing partner with me and for all of us. And more than anything, thank you all so much for taking the time to share community with us today. So we're going to quickly get started just with a quick land acknowledgement, as well as kind of a what we call a level set, kind of a breathe out real quickly. It's been a long day, a long week. I don't know about y'all, we're in week 2 of the semester with the largest freshman class in history. It's a lot, right? So we're all carrying, and we're all carrying stuff to the work and home with us from the work. We acknowledge the land on which we sit and occupy today as the traditional ancestral home of Indigenous peoples and nations. I acknowledge my roots on the stolen land of the Dakota and Ojibwe in Minnesota, and my current residence on the land of the Shawnee and Osage peoples in Kentucky. Please take a moment and use that question box and type the name of the peoples on whose land you currently reside. Without them, we wouldn't have access to this gathering and this dialogue. We take this opportunity to thank and honor the original caretakers of the land and the current caretakers of the land. We also honor our ancestors and the narratives of the peoples and their knowledge who have empowered us to share community here today. Thank you all so much for doing that. Again, quickly, I'm Adam Smith, spent, oh my gosh, a whole life in higher education. Never thought I would, was a horrible student, took me 3 schools to get a degree, God help us. Went to college strictly because I was a football player, and took some time through a really unintended journey and a ministry really grounded in flipping tables and washing feet to be blessed to serve and transform some campuses and some communities, but more importantly, the lives of students and the lives of the teams that I was blessed to work with. It's such an honor and a privilege. It's also a heck of a burden, right? It's a heck of a burden to do that. So my contact information is below. I also want to take some time to introduce or have each one of our panelists introduce themselves. Dr. Bates, that's second time. Tierney.
Greetings and salutations, and thank you, Adam, for the introduction. Overall, Dr. Tierney Bates currently serves as a Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at the University of South Carolina Upstate. I consider myself what I would call a servant and transformational leader. A lot of times, particularly in education, we can become what I call mediocre or transactional. And really what we do is get the opportunity to empower communities and change lives. Also, one of the leaders talking about career development, talking about engaging our current generation of students that are coming to us within education as a whole. I'm an executive career coach as well. And hopefully, we don't know, but maybe one day through the Lord, I'd be blessed to be leading a college as a college president. If I'm blessed to do that, you know, as you rise up, sometimes you decide whether that's truly what you need to be doing or you want to be grassroots and being engaged with the students like I am today overall. But an honor and pleasure to be with you guys today and have this great conversation.
Thanks, Tierney. We always say, be careful what you wish for. Sometimes you get to a certain point on the hill and you realize the air's a little thin up here. Let me come on down a little bit and do more work at a different vantage point. So Tierney, whatever you hope for, you'll end up doing. Elena, please.
Hi, my name is Elena Martinez Vidal. I was a department chair actually for 16 years, and Tierney, just so you know, I so wanted to be a dean and then a vice, you know, provost and all of that. And one day I went, oh no. So I'm faculty now. I coordinate theater and music. I teach communication, public speaking, and theater. I am also the faculty council chair, which gives me some good insight into how some of this works. I do want to say that I am non-Hispanic because people assume that I am because of my name, but my father came here with 5 borrowed dollars in his pocket from Spain, so I am all European. I love to educate. I have been actually now teaching at Midlands Technical College in Columbia, South Carolina for 30 years. So anybody who knows me knows that when I open meetings, I open them with the land acknowledgement. We here are on the lands of the Congaree and the Talaguatier peoples. And so I honor my ancestors and the people who had these lands. Anybody who wants to contact me, there's my contact information. I try very hard to be very transformational with the students. I think public speaking is a beautiful course to do that in.
Elena, thank you so much for being here today to have that faculty perspective. Elena is also a frequent flyer of these spaces. So she's been to a lot of these. We've connected. She's somebody I was like, I gotta get your voice out here in front of the people. So it's just really been an honor to build community through these spaces. So thank y'all so much. My colleague, Mark Bradley.
Thank you, Adam. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Bradley. I work at the University of Kentucky with our fearless leader of this call, Adam Smith. I've been there for 10.5 years, and my role is business process improvement within the enterprise applications team. So I'm actually in IT, but I don't do a lot of coding or anything too technical. I do a lot of drawing and explaining and digging, research on processes, recommendations on how to use the university's resources in a better way. Talk a lot about user experience. You know, that's always good outcomes to processes. How I got into this is I used to work for a Toyota company, and they're all about lean, right? Not just on the assembly lines, but in the office as well. So a dozen or so years learning lean tools, and then got a job at the University of Kentucky where you may know this, higher ed, a little slow to change, you know. So applying those principles in higher ed was kind of mind-blowing to some, right? So that's kind of what I've been doing. I do have my MBA, so I thought when I came here that I would spend most of my time on, you know, core services like accounting and purchasing and things like that. That has not been the case. The last couple of years, I've focused very heavily on the provost side of the house. So advising, student success, faculty hiring. So I've kind of played many, you know, worked with many departments at UK and hope to continue doing that. I'm from Kentucky, so it's a great honor for me to work at UK.
Mark's the guy. Mark has bourbon in his blood, y'all. Bourbon in his blood.
Not at the moment, but
Yeah, 95% of the world's bourbon is made within an hour and a half of my house. Just let everybody know. So y'all that are participants that are here in space with us today, please use that question box. We have questions, right? We're gonna have conversation, but yes and amen. You know, you're full of it. I don't agree with that. What about this? This is really your time and your space. So we'll talk, but if you have questions, make sure to use that box and make this as interactive as possible. We'd love to hear, especially about this, right? Because the challenge, and I'm going to let Mark kick it off, because Mark, the beauty of one of the things I learned from Mark and our enterprise applications folks, and we've went, now we're going to go to the second or third conference, Mark, and present on UK's homegrown technology, but more importantly, our partnership between student success and enterprise application and IT. Because when I remember sitting down with Mark and a colleague of ours who said, at some point, Mark, it was you who said, we don't want you to give us problem or solutions, we want you to give us problems. Well, tyranny in my work is, don't give me, I know all the problems. Don't bring me problems without bringing me solutions. It's completely different, right? What Mark and his team want to do is be a part of the solution, because we don't know what the solution is. We think we know. At one point, Mark, you and I were talking about checking in for advising appointments, because all the stuff that we've built, the tech at UK, is owned and built by UK. So it has to be built with the user in mind. And I was envisioning something I had done 8, 9, 10 years ago, swiping an ID, touching a screen. And at some point, Mark, I stopped myself, right? And I said, ooh, if I do that again, y'all stop. I don't want to be the rear view mirror. I want to be the front of the hood. So I don't care if it takes us 3 years to build what Great Clips has. I want students to show up and I want us to know they're there, right? So I'm telling you what I think the problem is. Y'all, let's unpack the solution together. So Mark, your work is business process improvement, right? I thought we would start talking about, because you're bringing that Toyota manufacturing principle, what are the biggest challenges that you see? Because you're not on the academic side, which is one way, and then the student affairs, student success, staff side, right? What do you see as some of the biggest system challenges to the kind of silo breaking and the kind of collaboration that we want to do? And what are some of the things you've done at UK to kind of break those things down?
sure. I always say, to overcome, we first must understand. So a lot of the silos you know, people might not understand the big picture, and that's where I got to get to at the beginning of any process improvement. You got to document the current condition, and in doing that, that's all the research on the front end. In doing that, you understand people's roles in the process, who's inputting information, what's expected to come out of the process, and to whom. Is everyone within the process getting all the information they need to do their part? A lot of times, over years and years, people lose that big picture and they know how to do their task, but they don't see their place in the grand scheme of things. So maybe aren't communicating well enough, or doing all the steps that would be helpful down the line. So I spend a lot of time, as I said, documenting and really thinking through each role and each transaction. So getting people to see their big picture, see their place in it, is a big part of it. Oftentimes when you start documenting the current condition, things just bubble up as clear problems. A lot of times in the systems work that I do, for example, UK implemented SAP in 2015, I think, 2015, 2016. A lot of those processes weren't re-engineered at the time for the new system, and a lot of them have not been changed since that time. So it's a constant state of revisiting processes. The Japanese term is Kaizen, is you're looking to continuously improve. In other areas, you do some big transformational change as opposed to using the scalpel, you know, to carve out things. Sometimes you need, you know, a barbarian's axe or something like that. So I'll speak a lot to that later, but is that kind of covering the bases you were thinking, Adam?
No, it really does. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yes, it does. Mark, I think one of the things that's really interesting in pointing out, right, is, Tierney, you know that, and if y'all haven't seen the report that the consultant that did Texas A&M stuff a couple months ago, it was all the stuff we knew. Like, you are completely decentralized, right? I mean, Texas A&M is all over the place, huge multi-campuses, and everybody has their own everything. Oh, we have our own HR people, we have our own comms people, we have our own planning people, we have our own advising people, we have our own everything, our own training people, but then everybody's saying gig 'em come Saturday afternoon, right? And we're all, Tierney's at USC Upstate has been at a bunch of places and blessed by a bunch of places, but that's the one thing we know, is that in higher ed, there's a decentralization that is critical to keep the feel and the flow of each department, each college. All those things are important, but there's limited resources, right? Resources are really limited. So Tierney, how do you leverage limited resources by building partnership, and how is that trust built? In particular, across lines between your area, student affairs, and the academic side of the house?
So Adam, it's very important for student affairs and academic affairs to walk hand in hand on a couple of different things. First, I would start with people, because a lot of times, like you just mentioned, higher education is known to have its silos, and we're doing the same thing in those silos, yet not realizing that we're not using our time, talent, and treasure wisely. And so how do we make sure that we're using our talent wisely from a people management perspective is important. So to Mark's point, when you're talking about going lean, sometimes we have duplication of not only people doing the same job, but also the same processing. Example of that is our business hubs. To be able to say, we're going to take our business hubs and shrink it, and you have one business hub that handles everything around academic affairs, student affairs, athletics, and all that stuff, versus having all these different budget folks and different offices as far as that is concerned across things. That segues me into the next thing around budget. When I think about it, we don't think about in higher education how we save money and able to do more when we partner with our academic partners and others across campus. So in a prime example right now, I'm actually going down to Columbia, Alina, pretty soon to sit down and listen into what's going on at other campuses within our system to see how we can streamline and go lean to impact student success, right, overall. So I have to walk hand in hand with our student success partners, because what happens inside the classroom affects our students outside the classroom, and vice versa. What happens to them outside the classroom affects them inside the classroom, particularly around retention, matriculation of students as far as that is concerned. So it's important to look at our policies. When I was at North Carolina Central University, our policies in higher education is what blocks most students from being retained, matriculated, and getting their degree. Why? Adam, you know this, we don't hire enough academic advisors to address how the advising helps students get along. I know this because I'm dealing with a case right as we speak. Two, we have to cross-train people to be able to think about the different functional skills they have in higher education, where if you're a faculty member or a staff member, how can you pivot, right? Because we had to do that during the pandemic. So what the pandemic should have taught us is to think about how we go leaner, pivot, and use our resources, particularly when we're seeing a mass exodus of people leaving because they want to be able to move up, or i.e. make more money. And we're not thinking about how do you combine some opportunities in that realm that retain staff and look through the opportunities and where is the waste, as Mark would talk about overall. And we have a lot of waste. I came from Chapel Hill, and there was a position for everything at Chapel Hill. And I'm like, well, wait, are we doing the same thing and hitting the same segment of students? And you're making more money than me? No. So it's all those other great things that you had to think about when you're doing this and having this conversation. But when you start partnering, you can really have a lot of wins. Let's look at Georgia State. When Georgia State University looked at their matriculation and their students, and now they're a national model around student success. Everybody's going to study with Tim Rennick and everybody like that, because I know we're doing it. That's what we got to get to. How do we take our institutions, whether they're large institutions, community colleges, or smaller state comprehensive institutions as far as that's concerned, and streamline our people, our budget, our process, and our strategic planning overall? That doesn't mean I'm getting rid of people. That doesn't mean certain things are going to go away. It means what is the right way to right size an institution for today's student and for our staffing models, and at the same time grow for the future.
Yeah, Tierney's so good. And you're exactly right. We were sitting with some colleagues a couple, 3 months ago, and they were doing, one of our colleges was doing a hire for an executive leadership position. And they didn't have a lot of applicants, and the applicant pool wasn't providing the level of diversity that they had hoped. And rather than pausing, they said, well, what will happen if we have an issue? If we have an issue and we don't hire anybody, what happens? And I said, well, we have the whole university. I mean, there's a whole department that handles this with diversity, equity, inclusion on campus. But, well, we need to have our own. But they didn't even, their brains didn't even think, wait a minute, there is an EEO office. There is an office of diversity, equity, inclusion on campus. We don't necessarily have to have our own, but it's this culture of, I have to have my own person too, right? And so one of the challenges, did y'all see Serena Williams last night? Tierney, did you see Serena last night? I mean, okay, so just to be clear, any conversations on the GOAT start and end with women. So let's just, and Jordan, Tom, all the rest, LeBron, they ain't even close to Serena, Simone Biles, Allison Felix. It ain't even close, okay? You didn't give birth to a whole human. And the mental of that is crazy. Just the mental of where, as a former student athlete and a former athlete after being a student, I can't imagine the longevity and the mental of that. The thing about it is our faculty are Serena. That's what made them faculty, Tierney. They have gifts that normal people don't have. And one of the challenges is the institution for faculty spins like this, because Serena's reality is reality, but she just got gifts we don't have, mentally, physically, emotionally, resilient-wise. Imagine me and Elena and Mark and Tierney working out with Serena. She'd be looking at us like, what's wrong with y'all? Pick it up. Like, well, we're just normal people. And then you have all the student affairs people. Okay. And for us, we're called to this work because most of us either had somebody who changed our lives that we want to be like, or nobody helped us and we want to give students what we didn't have. Right. And so the university moves like this for us. And when those two things collide, it creates friction because those alternate realities are both real. They're both real, but they're different. Part of my work, the biggest part of my work, Mark, you know this, is translating between these two places and having enough credibility to sit down with deans and say, no, no, no. You have to there's stuff that we bring to the table. I know you know, Elena, you know theater, but I'm gonna graduate you some students. But that takes a certain amount of understanding, not just of what you know, but also knowing that the faculty member, that how the university works for them, just like the workout plan for Serena does not work the same as it works for us, right? It's very different. Elena, talk about that, because you're the faculty voice here, right? So the academic side of the house, and it all starts with relationships. Mark is about systems. I wish our systems were better, but in the end, it's about developing real eye-to-eye relationships with people. How do you use colleagueship? You and I talked a little radical candor a minute ago, right? How do you build sustainable relationships through that level of colleagueship, authenticity, and ultimately you're helping students, but you aren't just doing it in your department, you're doing it across the institution. How do you do that? What are some of your tips?
So when I first started full-time, we did not get a lot of help. It was kind of like, hey, here's your office, here's an empty office, here's your desk, go forth and do your stuff. So the lovely thing is we have developed a fabulous process called new faculty learning communities that we use when new faculty come on board, and they spend a whole semester actually in a little cohort with all the other new faculty, and it really develops a long-lasting relationships across all the departments. I mean, it's very, very nice. I didn't have that, so I had to sort of make my way and learn my way through it. There are also, when I was a department chair, I used to really encourage my new faculty to either be on the curriculum committee or to be on some committee or be on faculty council. And that way they would learn more about colleagues across the campus, because we are very different. I mean, we are very different. I'm in the humanities, which is completely different from math or any of the STEM areas. But it's lovely to have colleagues in those areas and understand what their issues are. I'm now faculty council chair, and that's a whole story. But I was always, just so you know, a servant leader, and I'm very collaborative. So I'm using the same style as faculty council chair. And I've actually reached out to other areas of the college because I want us to collaborate. I want to bring in information. I want us to help other areas. I want them to help us. I do want to say one final thing though, right here, is that, Adam, you often talk about how traumatized the students are from the pandemic. I'm really looking at faculty, and faculty are still very traumatized by the pandemic. It was a hard pivot. I have to tell you, my college was fabulous on helping us with that pivot and giving us all Zoom, and we had Zoom training, and we did Zoom pedagogy the next year and all that. But it's like faculty are still a little shell-shocked, like, oh no, what's next? What's next?
No, that's so true. There was one of my colleagues, Teresa Radomski Bamba, shout out to Teresa of Miami of Ohio, my sister on here. For a long time in my career, everything was about the students, right? It's the students, the students, the students, the students. And it was almost like I was being pious, part martyr. Like, I'm the only one that cares about students, right? And I would want, well, you got to give students grace. They have whole lives, they have these things going on, and they're struggling and all of this. But oftentimes I was fighting the very colleagues, faculty, staff, my advising colleagues, other administrators. I was literally fighting them for the students in my mind. Like, I'm the student's warrior, right? But I didn't give my colleagues the same grace I wanted them to give my students, right? Now I don't do the students anymore. It's the hardest thing in my life. Tierney, I would do new student orientation every day for 365 days. Okay. Last week, the first week of school is my favorite time of year, better than Christmas. It's like freshly mowed grass, right? I mean, I love me some students. So it's hard, but you have to see the students now as your colleagues and be able to give them, understand they're carrying trauma. They have the same stuff I was saying about students. I wasn't thinking about my colleagues. They have whole lives going on. They have families. They have all this stuff, right? And the world has affected them too. So give them that same kind of humility. Oftentimes when you're doing negative self-talk, right? Y'all know this. In your mind, one of the things you say is, now apply you saying that same thing you're thinking about yourself to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, I never say that to someone else. That's really, but I think some hateful stuff about myself, right? Now think about the kind of things I was thinking and think about my colleagues. Now, then I would think, now think about applying that to your students. I would never think that way about students. We give them, especially the reason why we're here is because we want to love on students. But the way to love on students is love on the people who are tasked with carrying them and supporting them. And that's where the impact happens and the grace happens, right? Is all of a sudden people start saying, oh no, you're not just here to be the warrior for students, you're here to care and love me. Oh, wow. Whether I'm the dean or the provost, I'm gonna sit there and talk to you like you are the center of the universe, right? And in the end, that relationship is real and it's valuable, right? Mark, talk about, because the people are a thing, right? At all of our institutions, no matter where we are, it's about call Tierney, call Michelle. How do I get that done? I talk to so-and-so. Well, yeah, and all of us who have moved around, we figure out, is any of this written down anywhere? Well, no, this is just what we do. Okay, that's how it works. But Mark, you're the systems and process guy. So if all of us won the lottery, and that's the one thing the pandemic showed us and is showing us, and racialized trauma is showing us, is that a job's just a job, and people gonna cut bait and leave and move closer to the people that they love and love them, and all these things are gonna happen. How do we deal with the processes, right? And give us some examples internally. I know you're doing some stuff around hiring with faculty. How do you build the systems and processes so if the people all disappeared, the infrastructure is still there, and doing it across academic, student affairs, and other lines? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, Adam. I've got a few that I could go to here, but you mentioned faculty hiring. So every college does things their own way, right? That's just the way higher ed works. They have their own intricacies and requirements and personalities. They've got their own deans, that kind of thing. So they don't want to be put in a box and have everything standardized. However, in this particular case, I said, let's leave your internal process the way it is, okay? Once it gets approved by your dean, then there's a central process that it needs to go through. It needs to go through faculty advancement. It needs to go through the budget office. We need to make sure we can pay for this position in over 5 years. Maybe there's some diversity funds as well that need to be approved. So we'll leave your internal process alone, but once it gets approved internally, we got to put it through the central process, which at that point we can standardize. So I worked with a large group of faculty and staff to get together a search authorization flow and a offer letter flow. The same can be said for curriculum management. When you're adding or dropping a course or adding a new program, very similar situation applies. You get it approved internally, but then it has to go through the graduate council, the undergraduate council. If it's clinical, it has to go through the healthcare council. Ultimately, it has to go through University Senate. So these are central bodies. So we can pick it up here and then map out the actual process for the central departments. So lots of examples of that in higher ed. And that lets us go to the deans and the associate deans and say, look, we're not reaching all the way in to mess with your process, but we've got to get some standardization in place.
Well, and Mark, I think what that does is it lets the folks You know, all Elena wants to do is teach, right? She wants to sit in the classroom and coach. That's it. You know, I'm an old football coach. I love me. Football coaches can't stand games, but we love us some practice, right? I mean, we sit out there. I'll be at practice all day, right? Love doing that. That's why our faculty are in there teaching. Just let us do everything else, right? We got that. Let us handle that, right? That's where we're the subject matter experts. And so sometimes getting those processes and systems in line are the very things that faculty and staff are looking for, right? Because we'll, just like there's Serena, we just got these other gifts. We're Beyonce, right? And so we're like, well, we told you we want you to do academic alerts, do the academic alerts. And they're like, well, when? When do I do academic? What happens when I do them? Well, in our mind, that's second nature, right? Oh, if a student is looking like they're wearing the same clothes 3 days in a row, if a student is it could be 100 of things, but the faculty don't. So we have to clearly lay out for them, okay, this is your job description as a faculty advisor mentor. These are the things. Oh, that's it. Because we're talking in two different languages, if that makes sense, right? And so, Mark, what you're bringing up is creating some standardization around language, but also standardization around roles, okay? We're not there. We don't want to be in the classroom. We don't know that stuff. Y'all know that stuff. Let us help you do the other stuff. But we don't do a very good job in our world of communicating to faculty and administrators in the academic affairs side in ways that are really understandable, because they almost seem oversimple. Well, here are the steps you do, and this is the timeline when alerts are submitted, and these are the occasions. I don't want to submit it wrong, or I submit an alert and nothing happens. Well, we create a system that closes the loop, that they get an automatic email from me when the alert is submitted, so they know, hold that guy accountable. Somebody has it, right? Those are the kind of things, Mark, and systems and processes that I think you really have helped us with to see and understand, right? Is how we can dance together, which is really important, right? Tierney, one of the things that I think you really touch on and you do really well is that interpersonal, but then simplifying kind of the relational pieces, right? If you're like me, I didn't know when people asked me what college I was in, I said, well, I'm in Drake, which means college, right? I was probably 35 till I understood what a college was. And that's simplistic, but we have all these acronyms and colleges and departments and things. Talk about how those real partnerships help our students, because that's your work, right? How do they help them navigate some of the institutional, cultural barriers, system barriers that we put in place just because we don't see those things because we're there, right?
Well, first, Adam, let's talk about our nomenclature in higher education. If I'm a first generation college student coming to campus, I don't understand the nomenclature. So let's back up there, right? You were just talking about faculty and what Mark is doing. We realize most faculty do not know how to teach. This is no disrespect to faculty or anything like that. Why? They've been researchers. They've been trained as PhDs and EDDs to research, not teach. And majority of universities in this country are truly still teaching universities. They're not a Chapel Hill, they're not a Columbia where they're research based. UCA Upstate is a teaching institution. Yet most of our faculty have not been taught how to really take the pedagogy and teach in the class to bridge that gap. So now we have that. Then you have the nomenclature of first generation students. You have the same thing with our faculty, right? Because some of our faculty are coming into this space and not understanding particular to that institution of what the nomenclature and the idiosyncrasies are as well. And so we have to do two things. For our faculty, it's about onboarding. It's not just the faculty day or the new faculty orientation, but what are the other things they need to have for their first year as a new faculty? Not just that one day, not just that 2 days of faculty, new faculty orientation or faculty development, but it needs to be ongoing, where you're assigned a mentor, where you have trainings throughout the year, because they're navigating particularly new faculty of what that space looks like and getting their feet wet in the pedagogy style. So that's one. Two, as we're doing that, and we've done this here since I've been here, is going around and telling the story from an academic affairs side of the house, student affairs of the house, about the nomenclature. What does this actually mean when you get to USC Upstate or Midland Tech or University of Kentucky? When we say go to the HEC, I didn't know what that meant. I was a new vice chancellor, so I don't know this. Nobody gave me a document that says, hey, these are the acronyms we use. These are the words that we have here at our campus, because they're different for every campus. So imagine a first generation student on their first day of class, they just moved into residence hall and they're trying to navigate campus. You're like, oh yeah, you just go to HEC. And I'm like, what is the HEC? So how do we onboard even our new students in our nomenclature, in our words and all the other great stuff moving forward as an institution? So one example is of trying to break down silos and build these partnerships across campus. I am meeting with every dean and department chairs across every college across campus to share with what we really do in student affairs. Because a lot of times people will say, well, you know, if a student has this issue, just send them to student affairs. Pause. Faculty have to realize they are part of retention and matriculation of students. And we have to educate them that not every case that arises has to come to student affairs. You are part of that, helping solve that culture of care, which I've been preaching here at USC Upstate, in that culture of care. So if you, and I've had to do this when I've gone to talk to each college. For example, let us help you train to see when a student is in distress. Let us help you understand what are the different things that you see when a student doesn't show up for their assignment. Why? We already know 65% of our students work. And so they're working, some a full-time job and going to school during the day, and I don't know how they do it. But we need to be able to work in partnerships. You mentioned the earlier work warning system. Well, we need to know this stuff. We don't need to know that a student's failing class on week 12 of the semester. We need to know week 4, 5, and 6, where we can have intervention and the ability to get to know them. And so that is along us having these monthly meetings, because I go to our Provost Council meeting as well. I go to our Faculty Senate meeting as well, and I go to our Staff Senate meeting. And my goal is always to give you a state of the Division of Student Affairs. What are the rising issues that we see? And then I meet with you as faculty members, as deans, and you tell me what you're seeing in the classroom, because what we might be seeing and what you might be seeing might be the same thing. And then we go to a person like Mark to say, how do we create an opportunity to be able to pull all this together from our resource perspective, knowing that not everybody has the time, talent, and treasure to be able to address these issues for our students to be able to move forward overall. So when we're breaking down those silos, we can't have egos about our areas, first and foremost. And next, we have to all see ourselves as part of the solution. Why? Because in higher education, as we see across the nation, some schools are thriving. Enrollment's going up. Some schools, enrollment is going down as far as that's concerned. If you look at the community college space, they're surviving right now based upon what state you're in and what their policies are in overall. So it's important for us to understand this, and that faculty members have to become more than just I teach a class or classes or this is my subject matter expertise, but how you're a fabric of the institution. And then they have to see themselves as being an advisor, a mom, dad, uncle, auntie, you name it, in helping students matriculate and feel like they belong at the institution and that they have a culture of care. Because I can name the faculty, and like all of us probably could on this call, who were the most instrumental in our careers and our lives, that took that extra time and that extra minute to work with you or help tutor you, even in sometimes some spaces as far as that's concerned. And so in student affairs, we want to help do that. I'm creating a thing called a faculty influencer program, where students will nominate those faculty members who have done the extra mile and going out the extra way for them. We need to recognize those individuals. On the flip side, we need to recognize how we get together. We're putting on lunches right now with all our freshman students in each college, where faculty members and people from student affairs are coming together to support this luncheon for all freshmen and first-time students in their particular college. And it's for our advisors, our chairs, our faculty, our student affairs support, all that stuff, to be there and say, we're here to wrap our arms around you, support you, and connect you inside and outside the classroom. So if you want to do any of that for all the people who are listening in today, that's one way for student affairs and academic affairs to get together, is truly partner on putting on these college luncheons just for your first year students in that regard. And you can include the other students as well, depending upon your budget, as I like to say, to be able to say, hey, we're all here and we're going that extra mile to know the names, the faces, the idiosyncrasies that are taking place on your campus overall, to help with that retention, that belonging, and that other great stuff. Why? I'll give you another example. When students come to me, particularly students of color, say, I don't see any faculty in my department or in my unit that look like me. Well, when we throw that luncheon, guess who's going to show up? The faculty they were just talking about, because normally they might not be taking their class. And so you have a connection to say, hey, might be a person you want to connect with that looks like you. They're not teaching the subject matter particularly that you're majoring in or the classes you need, but there's a resource and in person that you can connect with overall.
Y'all know why I bring Tierney Bates, right?
I'm in love with Tierney.
I'm gonna say all the Akron roots. I've been loving Tierney for years. So I think one of the things that Tierney's saying, he said so many things, but one of the things that for all our student affairs folks here, okay, advising, student affairs, I think advising is academic-ish student affairs. Student success is really what I do. We don't approach our practice with the same level of not professionalism, what I would call swag, right? If you have a family member who has a heart attack and you're in the waiting room and the cardiologist comes out, you want them to say, I got it. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is why. Let me trust me, I got it. Now you're gonna ask questions, but in the end, you're gonna trust that person's, not just their education and experience, but their practice and their ability to see your family member, right, as at that point in time, the center of the universe. You're not gonna get on an airplane and say, well, that pilot thinks they know what they're talking about. It's gonna be no. So that's always been a struggle sometimes with our practitioners, is we don't see ourselves as prescription writers. We don't see ourselves as that level. We see ourselves almost like the person that works at if I see myself as a transactional ATM, then that's how the students are going to see me. And that's how my faculty colleagues are going to see me. Everyone who knows me knows I show up with swag. I don't know much, but I know how to graduate some students, okay? And I will write a prescription. And it isn't if I think it's going to work, I know it's going to work. If you lay down on my table, I know that my hands are gifted enough that we're going to create a system that's going to take you from orientation through graduation. Part of it is this false humility that we have with, well, I don't know. It's okay to say, I know what I know. I can tell you, Tierney Bates knows what he knows. You sit down with deans, you sit down with department chairs, you sit down with faculty, that kind of credibility is, okay, I'm going to trust you. Because remember, at all of our campuses, whether it's UK at 33-ish thousand students, all the way to, I don't know, let's pick a monster, the University of Central South Florida. In the end, right, those families are trusting you with their most precious thing. There ain't nothing else they got. And it's easier to trust a kindergarten teacher because you have some control there. You ain't got no control about your 18-year-old son or daughter. When they give them to us, it's no different, as Tierney knows in his practice, than that parent or that family trusting their loved one on your operating room table. And for you to be like, well, shrug, I think I know. No, I know. This is what you need to do. Elena, talk a little bit, because Tierney said so many great things. The one thing that Tierney and I will struggle with is I think higher ed is losing people to ed tech, to other places, because we're never going to be, especially the place that I work, we're never going to be a remote. We are a face-to-face, love on you, Big Blue Nation. That's what we do, okay? We'll give some flexibility, but in the end, that's what we sell in the SEC, right? What we have, though, is community. And the very thing that one of our participants was talking about, she's talking about how people don't talk to each other. They just park in the same spot. They walk in their office. They talk to the people in the office. Then they go home. And what younger professionals, in particular in higher ed, want now is they want robust community. That's what we can give them. That's what we can give them that ed tech can't. I'm not going to let you sit at home in your comfy pants all day. Right? But what I can do is build community. We talked last week about upskilling and reskilling. We can constantly be pouring into you and developing you and connecting you in really intentional ways with others. So, Elena, I wanted you to talk about some of these communication breakdowns, communication that hits, communication that doesn't happen, right? Communication that is amiss, right? We always talk about you need to communicate, you need to communicate. I always say you need to forgive, you need to forgive, right? But in the end, how do you use radical candor, right, to mitigate communication breakdowns or communication differences to get to the point of we all have the same goal and we can lead, we can understand, we can forgive because we know everyone's intention and we know their heart.
I want to say my definition of radical candor is predicated on not taking offense. And it's something that I learned as a department chair. So it is possible to have conversations that are absolutely as honest as needed without being, of course, again, I teach communication as well. So without being insulting, without calling names, without, I especially now as faculty council chair or even as department chair, I have conversations that are hard. And when communication breaks down, now I'm the kind of person, like if Mark came to me and said, hey, Elena, I heard this rumor, I'd say, well, let's go find out if it's true. And I go ask the person. If Tierney said, I heard this rumor, I'd say, let's go ask that person and find out if it's true. And it could be true or it might totally not be true. So I'm really big on absolutely, and face-to-face to me can also be Zoom. Okay, I have to say I was department chair during the pandemic. And one of the very first things I did is I probably saw my faculty more than I did before because I actually did special Zooms for either areas or the whole, all the faculty or just the full-time faculty. So I probably saw them more. Communication is so important in all ways. So it's not just across the college. The thing that faculty just so you know, in my college, the biggest thing that faculty complain about are when surprises come. We don't like surprises. We don't like a week before school starts to be told, oh, this whole process over here that used to go this way is now going to go this way. And we didn't warn you about it, or we didn't know about it. I mean, that's where faculty get very like, what? Because again, you said it, Adam, we are focused on, I know I'm focused on getting my courses ready for the students. How am I going to get the students, new students? I love what you said. It's like, that you're mowing the lawn. It's like fresh mown grass. You're ready. Here's the students, bring them in. And then suddenly you're being told, well, in 2 weeks, you have to do this because we said so. And you're like, what? Why do I have to do that? I think that's the key. Now, I have to say, Midlands Technical College is pretty good. We have very good processes. We have pretty good communication. We are actually dealing with early alerts right now that are not working. So we're trying to figure out how to get ones that really will work. Because honestly, we want them earlier than what the advisors want. I actually have already sent out an alert on one of my students because he's a dual enrollment student from high school and he's not showing up. I immediately, but see, I knew who to call. I knew who to contact because I was a department chair. And that's the key to me, is that I have a lot of institutional knowledge and experience, but a lot of the new faculty don't. And Tierney is so right. I want to just address this. Now, we're a teaching college, but we do have people who come to us and they don't know how to teach. And so we have to teach them how to teach, because if they don't know how to teach, they may know how to do something else, but they don't know how to teach. It's very important that faculty learn how to teach.
Well, and y'all remember when Tierney, you remember Magic Johnson tried to coach the Lakers?
Oh.
Larry Bird coached the Pacers, and Michael Jordan has been an owner-ish with Charlotte. I mean, when you have that level of gift, it's really hard to communicate. And Magic is communicating to elite athletes, but Magic is at a whole different level, right? And so for people to say, just because you have these essential gifts that you can teach others to have it, usually the best coaches, right, maybe played the thing, but didn't play it at the highest level, right? I'm a coach, but I wasn't that great of an offensive lineman, right? Though, imagine Serena Williams as a tennis coach. How's that gonna work out? So gonna be like, what is wrong with y'all? I mean, I won a major championship. Was she 3-4 months pregnant? I mean, it's just a whole different level. So that level of assumption, and that's I think one of the things that I'll take from this. And Mark, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. But I think we make a lot of assumptions, right? Especially, again, the academic side of the house will always rail against the administration. That's Harvard, the first college in this country. It's just the nature of the beast, no matter where you are, right? That's just how it works. But in the end, how do we all bridge some of that misunderstanding and that difference? And it starts with relationship, right? One of the things, Mark, that you talked about is how you can deal with change. Because the reality is there isn't one college or university in this country that has seen the types of students we saw last year. Nobody. There's no data. Okay, every pro, Tierney, I'll be on the phone like, bro, I can tell you what students are going to do. These students, they're completely different. So we got to get some data. Every book that was written, every theory that's out, and so but in higher ed, Elena's talking about institutional knowledge, and Mark, I need your brain on this around change, because we have to change. Right? Or we go out of business. Blockbuster didn't change. Where's Blockbuster? Okay. And Blockbuster was everything. Okay. And Blockbuster is gone. So how do we, in your business process mind, how do we mitigate change, deal with accepting responsibility for bad processes that we all keep our jobs and we're lucky to have a 70% graduation rate. So how do we embrace change that may be hard for the people that work there, but is required for the people who live there, right?
Yeah, I put in the notes the 3 C's for change: clarify, consensus, and commitment. And I spend a whole lot of time on those first 2. I talked about documenting the problems. I'm going to share my screen if you think that's appropriate. And this will help me talk through some of these points. Can you see that?
Mark, can you repeat those 3? Those are good.
They are.
Clarify, consensus, and commitment.
Commitment.
From
Mark, we see
executives and the people.
No, you're good.
Executives and the people being changed, right? I read somewhere a good quote: people aren't opposed to change, they're opposed to being changed. So you have to involve them. Can you see my screen? Can someone give me a thumbs up?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We can see your chat.
Yeah.
You can see
So
my
make
chat.
sure,
Yeah.
make sure, no, we can see your chat from your desktop. We can see your Teams.
Okay, that is not what I intended. Let's stop that.
I know, I don't know what's going to be on your team, so I'm gonna make sure. What I think is Mark is trying to get the screen.
How about now? Same thing?
Teams again.
Okay.
Mark, why don't you just go ahead and try one more time. I think one of the things that's really important with these processes, and I'm weird, okay? I have never had a job that somebody had before me. Tierney, is that weird? Every job I've had, I've been the first. And they don't bring you in as the first to not change stuff. They bring you in to change stuff. But then what happens is, well, I thought you were going to change them. I didn't think you was going to change stuff that affect me. I thought you were going to change their stuff. I didn't know you were going to change my stuff, right? I'm comfortable with the way this works. We were having a conversation about, because it's warm here in Kentucky. Mark, you had it that time.
You had it.
I had it and then I messed it up. Okay.
Oh,
It's
dude.
it's warm in here in Kentucky right now, and our students are dressed kind of casually. And one of the things there you go, Mark, that I brought to the table and I said is maybe they're dressed casually because they're at home. See, we're at work, they're at home, so they're just going to eat at home. So it's a little bit different.
Right.
They aren't going to work, they're going to home. Mark?
Yeah, got it?
Yep.
Okay. I made this small because it really doesn't matter what it is, what process this is. I just wanted to show when we talk about silos and we talk about information flowing through a system, each of these swim lanes, if I can get this to highlight, each one of these swim lanes are different departments, different people, and anytime an arrow crosses one of these lines, we're exchanging information. Is it the right information for the person in this swim lane to make that decision? If not, if they're having to go and look in another system for some more data, that's a problem, right? That's putting a Band-Aid on a bad process. So we have to evaluate each time this crosses any of these lines to make sure the right information is being disseminated. The other thing is that each of these swim lanes have different leaders with different priorities, with different different MOs, So the other thing is when Adam and I talk about the transfer of information, I had a system one time that really didn't have any real owners. It was that curriculum management that I talked about earlier. It was owned by all those different committees. So you take all those requirements, they ask for this, the next one asks for something else, and it turns into this gigantic mess because I didn't have anyone to filter out the noise and give me a signal. So Adam and I talk a lot about, he's on the ground working with advising, working with students, he's getting all the input, and he has to process that, and then we'll meet on a weekly basis and he can tell me, he can give me the signal, as we say. He's filtering out and we're trying to ask why are they asking for reminders for advising appointments? Is that the problem, that we're not reminding the students, or is the problem they're not showing up, and why is that? So filtering out the noise, and there are a couple of process problems we can talk about, and one of them is it's a bad design. It's not capable of getting the right outcome because we're not giving the right inputs. But more often, it's the other, which is a deployment type of issue, meaning that this information isn't right going down to this swim lane, or we need to move boxes around or something like that. What we're looking for, I think someone mentioned eliminating waste. We're looking for non-value added steps. We're looking for duplicated steps. And we're looking for steps that can be done that don't have to be sequential. These three things can happen at the same time. It doesn't have to be 1, 2, and 3. It can be parallel. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. And I spend a lot of time doing documents like this, meaning I've clarified already, but what this document can do is build that consensus. We're all looking at the same thing. You can point at this, and we can discuss this box in particular, and everyone understands the visual. So it takes a whole lot of my time to do this, but again, that's 2 of the 3, and the third is commitment. And if we can get consensus and we get the right people in the room, we'll get commitment. So,
Y'all, the biggest, thank you, Mark. Lisa, I don't know if you can go and share everybody's contact, because that brilliance make your brain explode. He works with me every day, just to let y'all know. I get to be Willy Wonka and just dream. Mark knows I'm Willy Wonka. Mark, what about this? And we talk. I mean, the biggest. So when I came into my role at Kentucky, one of the questions that I said, Kentucky has homegrown tech. I said, why would we do that? You can go out and buy this and degree audit systems. And I was completely wrong. the amount of time that it takes for our IT professionals to retrofit those onto our institution is just as much or more as it takes to have our folks plan with the end in mind, all those systems together to work together. So our same people who are designing the system that does degree audit, design our My UK app, design our appointment check-in, designer, and so they're being built together. And we don't have to wait for 10 schools, Georgia State included, to complain about why EAB Navigate doesn't do X until they roll out version 7.0. I can say to Mark, because IT is one of those, like parking, complained about areas by us, because we ask for the thing we want. We don't sit down with them and do what Mark does and say, Mark, this is where we're trying to go. What do you think? And then he builds the scaffolding. And the best part of this is people stay in their lane because he's built the lanes. Okay, so who does what? Okay, you just do this. Are we good? Everybody good? Okay, let's go. And then assessing, is it working? Because at some point you got to push the boat in the water, right? And our online FERPA process, Mark, at some point we got to launch. And let's just watch the data. We don't have to communicate it to death. At some point, we've told people we know what's going to happen. Let's watch the data. Let's see if it works. And that's kind of my job, to kick it into the water and say, all right, y'all, let's go. I'll report back. We'll see if it works. Mark, fair? Fair?
Yes.
So one of the things, if Lisa can share screen back, y'all are thinking as our panelists, you know, these brilliant folks, y'all should have their contact information. I know Mark does this work on the side. Do not hesitate to reach out to him personally, because everybody says, well, if I had, they always say, Adam, if I had those people on my campus, how many resources are you spending at UK? Y'all got these people. There are Marks on campuses. There are enterprise apps people on campuses. Y'all just aren't talking to each other, okay? Mark's people, Smitha Chopra, who's my colleague in enterprise app, her people, they are as much educators as our faculty are. They know how our students use technology more than we do. So they are constantly pouring into me, hey, Adam, if one thing I'll share as we're going through people's stuff, we were building our online FERPA platform, and one of the things that the system was going to do was, as students created a designee online, I said, one of the things we want is we wanted to change it as easily and intuitively as you change your address on Amazon, right? That fast. Okay, you can put somebody on, you can take them off, put them on, take them off. 3 in the morning, take it off. 2 in the morning, take it off. Anytime you want, you remove somebody. If traumas happen, they can go, right? Those kind of things. And so at some point, our program folks are meeting, Mark, I think it was you and the folks, or Joshua, and they came back to me and said, Adam, we just spent an hour and a half talking about something, and we want to make sure we're onto it. And they said, so when a student designates somebody under FERPA in the system, it was, and even if they take away their ability to get FERPA access, it was going to continue to display past people, like past addresses in Amazon, right? Other addresses. And they said, you know, we were thinking that if students, we can keep that on the back end, but we were just wondering that potentially seeing that could cause the students more trauma. And I was, tyranny, IT people. And I was like, okay. And they said, are we right? And I said, you are spot on. Well, because we were thinking, no, you're 100% right. They don't need to see that old designee anymore, because anything could have happened to why they're removing that status. So as you all, participants, as you all are looking for thought leaders, subject matter experts, to talk to your faculty, to talk on the student affairs side, to talk on the academic affairs side, just know that one of our advantages is we put folks in front of you who are in the work, who have done the work, who are real experts, that do a lot of executive, faculty to faculty, student to student coaching. Do not hesitate to reach out to these folks. Y'all, thank you so much. Tierney, Elena, Mark, my brother, we appreciate y'all. Thank you so much to InfoBase for creating this space. Make sure to share the recording with others. We will have another upcoming series starting later in September, and then look for Q4 in the coming weeks. Thank you all so much. Please take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you, guys.